I mean this in the nicest way possible. Happiness is an inside job. This is I mean this in the nicest way possible, and I'm your host, Ram. Let's go ahead and clear something up right away. When I say happiness is an inside job, I'm not talking about fake positivity. I'm not saying good vibes only. I'm not telling you to smile through real pain, ignore your mental health, or pretend bills, trauma, and world events don't exist. What I am talking about is emotional ownership. The world is loud. People are messy. News cycles are terrifying. Algorithms are constantly throwing doom in your face. You can't control most of that, but you can control whether your inner world becomes a carbon copy of the outside chaos or its antidote. For me, happiness has never been accidental. People ask me all the time, why do you always seem so happy? How are you positive all the time? Why do you smile so much? And it's always said like I'm hiding something, like I've joined a cult, like there has to be some dark secret behind me enjoying my life. And it always makes me laugh, because to me, it's really not that deep. I just genuinely like being here. I pursue my dreams. I nurture relationships with people I love. I pay attention to beauty. I let myself enjoy art, music, fashion, food, traveling, stupid little inside jokes, and cozy nights in my own space. All of that gives me a reason to smile. And when life is not cute, when things go wrong, when I get bad news, when people disappoint me, when doors close in my face, I feel it. I get sad, angry, annoyed, whatever it is. But I don't build a permanent house in that emotion. I let it move through. I process it. And then I very intentionally decide, okay, I'm done letting this ruin my entire week. It usually takes me 2 business days to get over almost anything. That part is a choice. Over time, I've realized that this is not universal. Some people hold on to anger like it's a personality trait. Some people treat resentment like it's a family heirloom. Some people fully identify as toxic and think it's cute. I avoid those people like the plague. Because here's what I've learned about myself. If I give negativity unlimited access to my brain, it'll hijack it. So even as a kid, I started doing something without really having a language for it. Picture little me in my bedroom, creating a whole world in my head, drawing, writing, playing, while things outside the door weren't always so peaceful. I learned early that if I wanted to feel okay, a lot of that was going to have to come from inside of me, not from my environment. Looking back, I didn't have the language for emotional regulation or nervous system resets or resilience. I just knew I had to find a way to feel okay, even if nobody around me was teaching that. That doesn't mean I never struggled. It means I started practicing emotional strength way before I knew that's what it was. And that's really the heart of today's episode. When I say happiness is an inside job, what I'm really saying is happiness is a skill, not just a mood. It's something you can build, like a muscle. It's something you can protect, like a password. And it's something you can reclaim, even when life has given you every reason to feel the opposite. So here's what we're going to get into today. Why happiness is more of a practice than a personality trait. What the actual science says about optimism and emotional resilience. How your mindset shapes the way you experience everyday life. Why negativity can be just as addictive as any other bad habit. And how to stop letting other people's drama lean on your energy like you're their emotional coach. By the time we're done, my hope is that a part of you quietly thinks, wait, maybe I have more power over my happiness than I thought. Not in a just think positive way, in a grounded, grown, I respect my nervous system and I choose peace when I can type of way. Because the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to stop outsourcing your happiness to people and situations that were never built to hold it. Let's start with the part people usually underestimate the most, the brain. Emotional resilience isn't something you're simply born with. It's a neurological pattern that gets shaped over time, based on what you repeatedly focus on and reinforce. In other words, the more you practice emotional recovery, the better your brain gets at bouncing back. Psychologists sometimes describe this as emotional conditioning, and many point toward research in neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to rewire and reshape itself through repeated experience. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Your interpretation of an event impacts your emotional response just as much as the event itself. Psychologists call this cognitive reframing. When you change the meaning you assign to something, your nervous system responds differently. You can either keep reinforcing a threat response, or you can introduce a calmer interpretation that helps your brain return to balance. This isn't pretending everything is perfect. It's choosing a perspective that gives you more emotional power instead of emotional panic. And the more you do that, the more your brain learns that calm is possible, even during difficult moments. Over time, positivity stops being something you try to feel and becomes something your brain automatically supports. One of the biggest shifts for me was realizing happiness is not just emotional, it's biological. Positive psychology researchers have been studying this for decades, and what they keep finding is that optimism actually impacts your physical health in ways most people don't expect. For example, researchers looking at positive emotions have linked optimism to longer lifespans, lower rates of cardiovascular disease, and stronger immune responses. Not because happy people magically avoid problems, but because your nervous system spends less time in survival mode and more time in regulation. When your body isn't constantly pumping stress hormones, it heals, it restores, it stays resilient. That is a biochemical reality, not some woo-woo inspirational talk. And one of the simplest tools that shows up across these studies is gratitude. Not some surface level version, but real emotional appreciation. Gratitude literally nudges your nervous system away from fight or flight and toward regulation. That shift calms the body and interrupts the stress chemistry that makes us reactive and anxious. You don't need to meditate on a mountaintop to experience this. Small, consistent gratitude practices make a measurable difference. And then there's the idea of learned optimism versus learned helplessness, a concept many happiness researchers talk about. Learned helplessness is what happens when life teaches you to expect disappointment, so you eventually stop trying. Learned optimism is the opposite. It's training your mind to look for possibility instead of catastrophe. And what experts in positive psychology have shown is that optimism, just like helplessness, can be learned. It's a mindset that gets built, practiced, and strengthened over time. To me, that's incredibly powerful because it means happiness isn't something that falls into your lap. It's something you train your brain to recognize. And the more you practice optimism, the more your body responds with calm, clarity, and energy. In other words, your emotional choices shape your biological reality. I want to bring this back to real life for a second, so it's not just scientific. Because if you look at people who radiate happiness, most of them didn't get there because life handed them perfect circumstances. They got there because they learned how to reinterpret what happened to them in a way that made them stronger instead of cynical. Think about someone like Pharrell Williams. He is one of the most creatively successful people of our generation, but almost every interview he gives circles back to gratitude, curiosity, and perspective. He talks about optimism the same way athletes talk about practice, as a skill he repeats until it becomes a mindset. That is learned optimism in real time. Or look at Oprah. Her childhood was painful and traumatic in ways many people never fully recover from. But she is the definition of reframing. She built her life around meaning and emotional truth. She talks about joy as something she chooses again and again, not something she waits to receive. That is intentional happiness. And then there are quieter examples. A lot of people have personal stories of shifting away from negativity culture. Someone I know stopped following people who made them feel drained all the time, and their emotional baseline literally shifted. Within a month, their anxiety went down, they stopped feeling exhausted after social interactions, their mind felt lighter simply because they refused to feed negativity anymore. Nothing dramatic happened, they just stopped engaging, and their emotional baseline changed. These stories all point to the same idea. Happiness comes from interpretation, not circumstance. You can take the same moment and make it heavy or light, depending on how you frame it. You can feed resentment or you can feed resilience. The choice sounds small, but the impact is enormous. Let's circle back to research from the experts for a second, because what we're talking about isn't just motivational language. There is an entire field of psychology devoted to happiness research. And one of the leading voices in that space is Dr. Martin Seligman, often known as one of the founders of positive psychology. He talks a lot about something called learned optimism, which is basically the idea that optimism is a skill you can practice, even if it doesn't come naturally at first. According to Seligman, people who learn to interpret setbacks through a more hopeful lens tend to feel more capable, more resilient, and more persistent over time. And I want to stress something important. This isn't about pretending everything is fine. It's about reframing what something means, so your nervous system stops treating every inconvenience like a catastrophe. Positive psychology researchers describe happiness less as a mood and more as a combination of emotional regulation, supportive thinking, and meaning making. In other words, happiness is partly perspective and partly habit. So when people say things like, "You're just naturally happy," or "You're always positive," what they don't see are the mental reps, the daily choices people who do this are making, the boundaries they've set, the reframing they're doing in real time. Happiness isn't accidental, it's practiced. Now let's talk about the other side of this, because avoiding negativity is not just about being pleasant. Chronic negativity actually sticks to your brain in really sneaky ways. Neuroscientists talk about something called the negativity bias. Basically, our brains evolved to pay more attention to what's dangerous than what's good. So if you're always consuming negative content or hanging around negative people, your brain starts rehearsing those patterns automatically. It treats negativity like survival material, even when it's not. And here's something a lot of people don't realize. Negativity gets chemically reinforced. When we gossip, doom scroll, or vent nonstop, the brain releases little bursts of stress hormones like cortisol. Over time, your nervous system starts craving those emotional spikes, almost like a habit. Psychology researchers sometimes describe this as a kind of emotional conditioning. The more we rehearse negative thoughts, the more wired they become, and the harder it is to pull ourselves out. Think about gossip culture. People bond over negativity. They bond over outrage. They bond over complaining. And at first it feels like connection, but really, it drains your energy and shrinks your emotional range. You leave conversations feeling heavier instead of lighter. Then there's doom scrolling. It gives your brain the illusion that you're staying informed or staying vigilant, but really, it keeps your nervous system in low-level survival mode. The American Psychology Association has been warning about this for a while, linking constant news exposure to higher stress, anxiety, and emotional fatigue. And maybe the most heartbreaking part in this, some people build an identity around being negative. They say things like, "I'm just being real," or "I'm just honest." But really, they're attached to the feeling of being right about how bad everything is. It becomes their worldview, and eventually their personality. And that kind of negativity isn't realism, it's resignation. This is why choosing happiness feels rebellious sometimes, because you're literally going against the emotional habits that most of the world is practicing without even knowing they're practicing them. So let me shift into something a little more personal, because I don't want this to sound like abstract theory and surface inspiration. This is how I actually live. These are the habits that genuinely keep my happiness rooted inside of me, instead of in whatever the world is doing that day. One of the most powerful choices I've made is curating my environments. And I don't just mean where I physically live. I mean my digital space, my relationships, the people I follow, the conversations I participate in. I've gotten very intentional about what I allow near my peace. If a space feels chaotic or heavy, I just don't go there. It's not avoidance, it's discernment. I have emotional boundaries that I guard like my life depends on them. Because in many ways, my emotional life absolutely does. If someone is constantly negative, constantly dramatic, constantly complaining, or constantly dragging the energy down, I simply don't spend my time there. And yes, sometimes people judge that. But the truth is, the longer I protect my energy, the more I realize how necessary that protection actually is. I don't join in those conversations. I don't absorb those moods. I don't let other people narrate my day. I also choose uplifting influences very deliberately. I follow people who inspire me. I talk to people who are moving forward in their lives. I invest in relationships that feel nourishing instead of draining. I'm not interested in circles built on misery. I'm interested in circles built on growth. And here's the small but big one. I filter what I consume. Social media, news, headlines, content. I don't let everything into my nervous system. I'm not out here doom scrolling at midnight and then wondering why I wake up anxious. I decide what I feed my mind, the same way I decide what I feed my body. I used to think I had to stay informed about everything happening in the world 24/7. But honestly, that kind of constant overload was draining me more than it was helping me. And finally, I have tiny daily rituals that pull me back into myself whenever I drift. Sometimes that's a gratitude moment. Sometimes it's a morning intention. Sometimes it's a quiet reset at night. But each little ritual tells my nervous system, we're safe, we're guided, we're good. These aren't aesthetic habits. They're emotional practice. They're how I keep my happiness mine. Here's the part I want to emphasize clearly. Staying happy doesn't mean being happy all the time. That's not realistic and honestly not human. What it does mean is strengthening the emotional muscle that helps you bounce back faster when things do knock you down. Think of happiness like resilience training. When life hits you, happiness isn't the smile you put on in the moment. It's the ability to come back to yourself without staying stuck in a negative spiral. That's emotional strength. And like any muscle, it builds through repetition, not perfection. In psychology, emotional resilience is basically the process of recovering from stress rather than pretending stress doesn't exist. And one of the clearest things emotional researchers say is that resilience isn't something you're born with, it's something you practice. And this is where a lot of people misunderstand positivity. They think positivity means ignoring problems, but real positivity is acknowledging the problem, feeling the feelings, and then choosing not to live there longer than necessary. Resilience isn't denial, it's recovery. I can't tell you how many times I've had to remind myself of that. Being positive doesn't mean forcing things to feel good. It means trusting I can come back to myself even after things fall apart. And personally, that's become my quiet philosophy. When something hurts me, I let myself feel it. I deal with whatever needs attention, but I don't attach my identity to it. I don't move in and decorate the pain. I experience it, and then I return to myself, my joy, my purpose, my practices, and my future. That return is the real skill. One thing I've learned over the years is that happiness is easier when you design it into your life. Meaning, you curate your inputs the same way you would curate your outfit or your home or your playlist. And there are a few simple tools that help me stay grounded in that practice, even on the days where life feels heavy. Curating joy. This is my favorite one. I literally collect joy the way some people collect stress. I choose things that make my brain light up. Music, style, creating, beautiful spaces, laughing with friends, simple pleasures. Sometimes I'll even build joy into my schedule the way someone else might schedule errands. Sometimes that looks like me throwing it back to the same song 5 times in a row because it makes me feel alive. Sometimes it looks like me treating myself to my favorite restaurant just because. It sounds small, but it changes everything. Practicing gratitude, not the performative kind. I'm not saying every morning needs to look like a Pinterest aesthetic, but even noticing just one good thing in your day shifts your nervous system. Some researchers say gratitude helps move us out of survival mode and into a regulated state. Setting intention. This is something I do quietly, internally. Before I walk into situations, I decide how I want to feel in them. It keeps me from absorbing everyone else's energy and reminds me that I get to choose the vibe I'm bringing in, no matter what's happening around me. Being selective with my attention. Simply put, what you feed grows. So instead of focusing on what drains me, I try to redirect my attention to what actually adds life back into me. It's not pretending the bad stuff doesn't exist. It's choosing what deserves my energy in the moment. Reframing things in my journal. This one is fun. If something annoying, disappointing, or stressful happens, I'll write down a line or two reframing it, almost like asking myself, okay, what could this be teaching me? Sometimes it's nothing deep. Sometimes it's just, wow, that was annoying, but maybe this detour is saving me from something worse. That small shift matters over time. Pausing before reacting. This one is harder, but it saves me constantly. Instead of spiraling or snapping, I pause, breathe, and remind myself I don't owe the world my reaction. And 9 times out of 10, That pause stops me from letting a moment ruin my entire day. It's honestly saved me from so many unnecessary spirals. If something doesn't deserve my entire emotional afternoon, I'm learning not to give it one. And listen, these aren't rules, they're practices. You don't have to master all of them. Just one of these tiny habits can shift your internal world more than you think. Which brings me to this week's challenge. I want to give you something simple to try this week. Nothing dramatic, nothing overwhelming, just one tiny shift you can actually stick to. I'm calling it the positivity plan, because this is about choosing positivity on purpose, not waiting for it to randomly show up. Here's your challenge. Pick one source of negativity in your life and mute it for the next 7 days. It could be a person online, a creator whose content drains you, a newsfeed that spikes your anxiety, or even a group chat that stays complaining. Just take a breath and quietly put it on pause for a week. Then choose one micro choice toward joy. Something tiny that lifts you up. Listening to a song you love. Opening a window and letting in the fresh air. Wearing something that makes you feel hot. Grabbing your favorite drink. Spending 5 minutes in silence. Whatever reminds you that you're allowed to feel good today. That's it. One mute, one joy. That's the positivity plan. Before we close things out, I want you to hear this clearly. Happiness is not accidental. It is intentional. It is a practice. It is a daily choice to anchor yourself in who you are instead of everything happening around you. Because the truth is, the world will always hand you reasons to feel overwhelmed. It'll give you headlines. It'll give you drama. It'll give you noise. But happiness is not built from what the world hands you. It is built from what you decide to cultivate within yourself. And please hear this. You deserve intentionally controlled joy, not the kind of happiness that only exists when circumstances behave. Because circumstances are unpredictable. Life is unpredictable. People are unpredictable. But your emotional foundation does not have to be. You deserve joy that starts inside and expands outward, not joy that comes and goes depending on who texted you back, who did or did not show up for you, or what random thing went wrong this week. So I want you to walk away with this thought. Your mood is not the world's responsibility. Your peace is not the news cycle's responsibility. Your happiness is your own deeply personal creation. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do is be real. Real about what drains you. Real about what lifts you. Real about what you actually deserve emotionally, not what you've been settling for. So let this be the beginning of your positivity plan. Not perfection, not fake happiness. Just small, intentional choices that help you feel more like yourself. I'm Ram, and thanks for getting real with me today. You just finished listening to I Mean This in the Nicest Way Possible, written and produced by Richard Armand Mills.